In this video, we're going to finally work on our actual single store layout. So when you hit one of, I'm on the answer right here, but when you go to your list of stores and you were to click on one of the stores, there's a couple of things that's going on here. First, we need to find the actual store that has this slug. And then next, what we need to do is pull in the name of the store, the photo of the store. We need to create a map of the store. We need to show the address, a description, a list of tags. And then eventually what we're going to do is we're going to be getting into either showing a login form if the user is logged in, or if they're logged out, it tells them to log in to review, and then it will show a list of all the possible reviews. So a lot going on here. Let's jump into it. And if you're sort of feeling comfortable with this whole make a route, make a controller, then the controller will query the database, get some data, and then pass it to a template to render. Maybe I would suggest like pausing the video right here and try do this piece on your own. So let's click on one of these. And of course, we're going to get a 404 because we do not have a route set up for that. So it says butcher and the vegan. Now, what we're going to do is go into our routes file index.js and first set up the route for that. So I'm going to go down here, say router.get /store / and we're going to call that a slug. And when that happens, we are going to run, and we'll just say catch errors, store controller.get store by slug. Good. Then we'll go into our store controller and we'll go to the bottom here and we'll make a new one. We'll say exports.get store by slug. We're going to make it async because we're going to be querying the database. We have a request and we have a response. And we're up and running. So again, let's always just test that it actually works. Response.send, it works. Give it a refresh. Good. So we're hitting this URL and we say that it actually works. So first thing that we need to do is query the database for that specific store. So they say const store equals, and then we will await store.find1. And now here, what is our query going to look like? Well, we only have one piece of data, and that is the actual slug, right? We don't have the ID of the store. We only have the slug. So we need to do a lookup in our database for a store where the slug field is set to this. So we'll say the slug is set to, and now how do I access the actual parameters? Well, again, if I were to comment this out, we could response.json, the request.params, and the request.params is going to just be an object full of all the data that is in the URL that we've set out to. So it's slug. Why? Because we put a slug in our URL here, and that will give it to us. So we can go back to here. Slug is equal to request.params.slug. Then when we have that actual store, what we're going to do is give ourselves, we're going to say response.json, the store. Let's just double check that we have that data coming back. Good. So we have all of the data that we know that our query is actually working. However, what happens if we hit a URL that doesn't exist? Vegan X. Then we get null. So it actually still does work when you give it the wrong URL. But ideally what would happen is that we would show a 404 because that's not actually a page that exists. So in our case, we need to handle this ourselves, because if a query in MongoDB does not find anything, that's not necessarily an error. It's just a query that returns null. So we need to sort of check ourselves. So we'll say if there is no store, then what we need to do is return next. Or often you'll see just someone call next and then type return. So those are both valid. Often you'll see people do it on one line even without the if statement. So return next like that. Those are all three the same. So what does that do? Well, what you tell me what next does? Well, first of all, we actually have to pass next here. But what does it actually do? Well, next will assume that this is a middleware and pass it along to the next steps. So again, I know we're probably getting sick of me showing you this, but I really want to drill this home. If we go to our app.js and we find our routes, there we go. This is our routes right here. And if it is not found, it's just going to say, all right, well, next, move on to the next piece of middleware, which is this not found handler. And that's going to kick in. So that's all we need to do in order to render out a 404. Give it a save. And now if I refresh this page, we should see a 404 page because that store is not found. But if I take the X off the URL, we should actually get, oh, actually right now we're not sending any sort of data, but we could say response.json the store and actually get the data for that specific store. Good. So again, put an X on the end, 404, go back to our real store, and we see the actual data. Good. That's what we want. And at this point, now we don't want to just JSON it back. We want to res.render it, and we want to render out a store template, which we'll make in a second. And what is the data we need to pass? Well, we need to pass the store, which again, we can just do that with store. And then we want to pass the title, which is going to be the store.name value that gets passed in. Good. Now we'll open up our views and make a new file, and we will call that store.pug. And we will extend the layout. We have a block of content. And inside of that, let's just do an H2 tag that will contain the store.name, just to make sure that this is working. So refresh one of your pages. There we go. Butcher and the Vegan. Go back to stores. Click on Brew Bar. Good. So now we know that our controller is querying the database, getting a store back, and passing it along to store.pug. So now it's just a templating problem. And if you want to try match it to what this looks like, feel free to go ahead. Otherwise, let's work on this now. So we need a div with a class of single. And inside of that, we need a single __ hero. Inside of that, we need an image with a class of single __ image with a source of, you need to use backticks here, uploads / store.photo, or we want to use again store.png. Let's see if this is working now. Click on Brew Bar. Beautiful. See some bergs. Click on the coffee shop, which doesn't have one, and it will give us the default image. Good. Really happy with that. Then we need to go underneath it and give ourselves an H2, the class of title, and title -- single. Inside of that, we want a ref equals. Again, we need to use backticks whenever we do generated strings. Stores / and we want to put a store.slug. I know we link to ourselves, but it's generally good to do for SEO. And then we'll put our store.name inside of it. How we doing? Good. Showing up. Brew Bar. All of our CSS is kicking in. Now, inside of, or at the same level as single, we want to put in some details. So not inside of single, as a sibling to single. And so we have a single _ details. And we also want to give it a class of inner, which will just constrain the width of it. We have an image with a class of single _ map. Let's give that a save and refresh. What needs to happen here is that we need to get what's called a static map with Google Maps. And how static maps work, if I go here, you'll notice that if I click this, it's not actually like an embedded Google map. There's no JavaScript here. It's actually just an image tag. And I can go ahead and inspect that. And you can see the source of this map is Google APIs / map / static map / center 43 -79 blah 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 blah, and it has an API key and a marker in there. So if I visit this URL here, you'll see that this is just a static map that I've created with a center, as well as you can put a number of markers and set the zoom on it in there. Now there's a whole lot that goes into making one of these static maps. See, if we look at all the params here, what do we have? We've got center, we've got zoom, we've got size, we've got our API key, we've got markers, which is a Latin along, and we have a scale, which is allows us to do high DPI for Retina-based devices. So rather than have to do all of that generation right inside of our template, we're going to use our template helpers, just like we learned about in our earlier videos. So if you open up helpers.js, you'll see that we have a function here called static map that takes in an array where the first thing is the long and the second thing is a lat. Why? Because MongoDB will give it to us in long lat. And then from that, we use an arrow function, which will have an implicit return. And again, if you are a little bit confused by what all this is, definitely check out my ES6 for everyone at es6.io. That will clear all of this syntax up for you. So HTTPS google.maps, blah, 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 blah. Center equals lat long. Why? Because MongoDB is long lat, but Google Maps is lat long. Then you want a zoom, hard-coded 14, size, hard-coded, key equals process.env.map key. So where's that coming from? We'll go to your variables.env. Map key, that's going in there. So if you want to sign up for your own Google Maps key, you pop that in there and it will automatically be replaced. I never like to put any sort of API key hard coded into template files because it's inevitably going to change and you're going to have a couple issues when you work with that. Then we have a markers, and the markers is going to be exactly at the lat long as well. So it's going to be exactly at center wherever it is, and scale is set to 2. So we have this little helper file here where you pass in the long and the lat, and then it will return to us this very long string, which will give us this hard-coded value. So we can say source equals, and we simply just set it to h helpers.static map, and you pass it the array of coordinates, which is available to us at store.location.coordinates. And again, if you're having trouble like visualizing what is the data available to us, you can always do a pre equals h.dump the store just to see what available data is to you. So now if I give this page a refresh, now we see the actual map, the pin. I got my dump showing up. I can remove that and everything is working out for me. Good. Let's keep going. We got a paragraph with class of single _ location. Inside of that, we need to put our store.location.address. There we go. Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Working well. Then we need to show some tags inside of that. So we'll say if there is store.tags. So if there are tags, because otherwise we don't want an empty tags list of an unordered list of the class of tags. And then we want to loop over each of the store tags in there. So we use each tag in store.tags. So store.tags is going to be our array. Tag is going to be each singular one, whatever it's called on each iteration. We have a list item with a class of tag. Inside of that, we have a link with a class of tag __ link, which the ref is going to set to, again, backticks because we're generating the URL here. Tags / and then we'll use our tag value there. And then finally, inside of that, we have a span with a class of tag __ text, and that will be just the tag value, or can be something like that. So let's refresh that. Beautiful, family friendly, licensed. What you could do with this is if you wanted to add something around it, like parentheses, the parentheses would show up, or if you wanted to make it look like a hashtag, you could put another hash in front of it, and it would say like hashtag family friendly, hashtag licensed. So that's the beauty of using this layout here. So that's the base layout for everything that we've got here. Actually, one thing we forgot was the description, and that will go right underneath the location. So just say paragraph equals store.description, and that gets popped in. Obviously, those descriptions are going to be a little bit longer. So that's it for now on the single page. We're going to come back once we have our login and register working and actually hook up some reviews, the ability to review as well as displaying past reviews.